This Master Sportsman's video guide is funded in part by Whopper Stopper, manufacturers of Bush Hog Spinnerbaits, by DuPont, manufacturers of Stren and Prime Fishing Line, and by Red Man Chewing Tobacco. Cliff Craft of Swanee, Georgia, ranks among the top 15 money winners of the Bass Angler Sportsman Society's tournament circuit, with earnings of more than $110,000. In 27 professional tournaments, Craft weighed in more than 1,500 pounds of bass. He's qualified 5 times for the Bassmasters Classic, considered to be the World Series of bass fishing, finishing 3rd in the 1980 Classic held at Thousand Islands, New York. Craft won the 1982 Lake Eufaula, Alabama National Bass Tournament. Proficient with all kinds of lures under all types of fishing conditions, Craft is considered to be one of pro fishing's top spinnerbait anglers.
Today we're going to be talking about spinnerbaits. There's basically 2 kinds of spinnerbaits, the single spin, single blade, and the tandem blade spinnerbait. We're going to be showing you where and how to fish these spinnerbaits in catching largemouth bass. A spinnerbait's been around since about 1925 or so, and it's one of the most versatile lures that a bass fisherman can have in his tackle box. We're going to be showing you some of the places to fish it and all the combinations of skirts, trailers, trailer hooks, and weights of the spinnerbait to fish. So let's go and see if we can catch some. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the single spin spinnerbait first and some of the places to fish it. We're fishing in South Florida in a central lake here. It has a lot of grass, milfoil, and some reeds around the shoreline. And a spinnerbait's one of the best things to use in a lake like this. Probably that and a plastic worm would be synonymous with fishing grassy lakes in Florida and along coastal areas. These single spin spinnerbaits, I prefer to fish those along the grass where we aren't really too dense. Along this line that we're fishing right along here, the milfoil comes out and then there's a grass line that just stops and it falls off in the deeper water. And I'm throwing the spinnerbait up there, pulling it off and then allowing it to drop down on a free fall before I start to retrieve the rest of the way. There's a lot of ways to fish the spinnerbait, and as we go on, we're going to talk about them. And the single spin, that's my favorite, as it is about 89% of the fishermen that fish spinnerbaits. It's the most versatile. You can do a lot of things with it. You can have a steady retrieve that's a steady all the way to the boat. You can pull it off a line like we're fishing here, let it fall, let it helicopter down. A lot of times the fish will strike on the fall. And we're looking a little bit at a spinnerbait, this one in particular, and I think it pretty well describes what we're talking about. We got the blade. We got a swivel that attaches the blade to the arm of the spinnerbait. And then down on this end, the business end, is the hook. We got an attractant skirt, whatever color you desire, this one being a chartreuse and a white. And on the end of it, I've got a piece of plastic. This is a little split tail eel that just adds a little bit of extra to it. The hook, I got a sharp hook on here. And those are the basic concepts that make up a spinnerbait. This is called the safety pin type spinnerbait from obviously the configuration. When we're talking about a single spin, this is what we're talking about. And let me show you a double spin or a tandem spin spinnerbait. All right, when we're talking about a tandem spin, we're talking about a spinnerbait like this that has 2 blades on here. Now then, this particular one here has the same configuration as far as the head. It has a white skirt on it, same safety pin wire design. It has 2 blades on it. These are used when predominantly fishing a fast retrieve on or near the surface. This one happens to have colored white blades. There again, they're in varieties of nickel, copper, gold, or what have you. These blades, they rotate in basically the same direction. Sometimes one will revolve one way and the other will revolve the other way. But the basic deal is that it's trying to give a lot of flash off in the water, and that's basically what attracts a fish to the spinnerbait, is the undulating skirt, the trailer that may or may not be on the end of it, and the blades revolving around the shaft of the safety pin type spinnerbait. This one is a good one. It has a ball bearing swivel, which allows the spinnerbait to spin freely on the shaft and will helicopter slightly on the fall. These are fished mainly when we're fishing around sparse vegetation or stick-ups and things like that, on or near the surface. The single spin, which I am fishing right now on my rod and reel, this one, it will helicopter down. It's a much more versatile bait, and again, it's probably used by about 75% of the spinnerbait fishermen. All right, I'm throwing along the edge of that milfoil line there, pulling the spinnerbait out, and then letting it free fall, settle down to the bottom, and hopefully the fish will run out there. Up in the day like this, with the sun brightly overhead, the spinnerbait hopefully will attract them to come out from inside the grass and attack, just like that one busted right in front of us. Let me hurry a cast in there and see if I can't get to him. Throw the spinnerbait out next to the grass, pull it out away from it to where you see the dark line disappearing, and allow the spinnerbait to free fall down. And there we go. That's a pretty doggone nice fish there. Yeah, here we go. All right. That fish just came out of that milfoil, the hydrilla line, and hit that single spin on the fall. Look at that fish. Mr. Bass. Well, if I can ever get him, if I can ever get him up. That, my friends, is a nice doggone bass. So we're gonna let him go back and catch another nose spinnerbait. There you go. I guarantee you he'll head right back to that line over there. Bury up in that grass and wait on another bait fish or another spinnerbait to come by. This spinnerbait, my trailer is messed up here. Let me show you what I'm using here for a plastic trailer. This little thing, and they come in all shapes and sizes, it's just a little something that you add that might give you a little bit more action to the end of the spinnerbait. Just slide it on the hook, slide all the way up to where you got a perfectly straight line, and then the skirt kind of envelops it, but you still got two little tassels that's hanging off there. Now then, this blade here that I've got is an Indiana blade. It's more of a teardrop shape configuration versus the more popular Colorado blade. The Colorado blade is more of a round, oval shaped blade, and this will give you more vibration, but this one spins faster for the amount of speed that you put in retrieve. So we're using along here, and I'm going to use it as long as it's effective, the Indiana blade on the single spin. But this is the Colorado, and this is the most popular, I guess, and at times it'll be the most effective producer. Let's make another couple of casts or two over that milfoil line, pull it off, let it fall. Now that line of grass is perhaps maybe 8 or 10 feet deep. And as it comes off there, if it hangs in the grass on the fall, then I'll let it go all the way to the bottom, then pull it back up a couple of times, and then let it fall again. Then start a steady retrieve on into the boat. If we don't get a fish on each cast, or a particular cast, go again, go up to the edge of the grass, just in case the fish are hanging up underneath the mat. Got interrupted there on my chain of thought, but as I was pulling it off from underneath that mat of floating grass there, a fish really socked it in. Pull it off, let it fall down, and be a little bit better prepared than I was at that point, and then wind the retrieve on in and go again. This line of milfoil along here is particularly good because it's got one heavy mat of what I would call duckweed or something. It's I doubt very seriously if sun could even penetrate it, and that is not hydrilla milfoil. It's something on top of that, and the wind has pushed it in here, and it's collected on top, and it gives extremely good shade for not only the bass, but the bait fish that swim around. And the bass, they'll just migrate along these areas and use that as shade because they don't have eyelids like we do. They have to go underneath in order to protect themselves. Come along, let it fall down, and then we hit them again. That was almost a perfect illustration of the way a bass will hit the spinnerbait, just coming off of the grass line and him falling down, and then all of a sudden he goes that hard bump. Oh, he's got a little grass around him. All right, come on in here, Mr. Bass. Okay, all tangled up in the grass, but that shows what we're fishing there. Another good spinnerbait bass. Come off the grass line, hit it on the dead fall. That bass go down there. Might illustrate here what we're fishing. This is hydrilla, and that's predominantly what this bank line is made up with, is this type of grass. Green gives a lot of cover, grows in denseness, gives a lot of shade, and that's what the fish hang around. It also makes them pretty hard to fish. That's why one of the spinnerbaits, or a spinnerbait, is one of the most versatile lures, because with the safety pin design, it allows the lure to come through most of that stuff without hanging up. Now, we couldn't fish a plug with a lot of treble hooks on it or something along this grass line. A plastic worm or a spinnerbait's about the only thing we can fish. Steady retrieve, feel that spinnerbait blade vibrating. That's one of the most important features in fishing a spinnerbait. We'll talk a little bit later about sizes of blades. Number 4 and number 5 blade is probably the most favorite of all size blade spinnerbaits. But we feel the vibration of the blade, and you can actually, when you stop retrieving, you can feel the spinnerbait as it helicopters down and lets its own weight free fall. You can feel that spinnerbait blade revolve and pulsate. A good graphite rod will allow you good penetration of that pulsation up the rod. Okay, we're going to throw up to the point, a little indentation in the grass, pull it out a little bit, let it free fall all the way down the bottom. Now, we're talking about the 4 main features in a spinnerbait being versatility, easy to fish, and they're noted for being big bass baits. And of course, they're always a year-round fishing lure. A spinnerbait is one of the lures, an arsenal of bass fishermen ought to have for all types of fishing. Now, we're bass fishing with spinnerbaits, but spinnerbaits are great. Northern pike lures, musky lures, but they're well noted all in the South and on the pro trail, and every bass club fisherman in the country knows how to use a spinnerbait, some to lesser degree than others, but a spinnerbait is like a plastic worm. You can't fish it wrong. There's just a lot of little tips and little idiosyncrasies that bass fishermen can get into that make them a better spinnerbait fisherman. Oh, there's another hit. Right on that one's probably 15 feet deep there. Fish, boy, that feels like a strong bass. That was tugging there good. Well, that's a bad boy there. All right. Another one that fell victim to the single spin spinnerbait. That, my friends, is a pretty nice bass, probably about a 4-pounder. And go right back on that milfoil. All right, that last fish, he took one of my little trailers off of my plastic trailer, and I'm gonna put a new one on. And while I'm in here in the tackle box, I'm gonna put on a new plastic trailer, a little split tail eel. I'm gonna fix it to the hook, slide it on. So I got a new plastic trailer. And for people that like to catch all the fish that strike, or predominantly the large percentage of them, we're going to use a trailer hook. I really don't like to use them all that often except when I'm getting a tremendous amount of short strikes. But a trailer hook is a cheater hook that we put on the back of a single hook spinnerbait. And you can buy these in most any tackle store. They got a large eye that allows them to slide over the hook of the existing hook on the bait, okay? But a little trick we have, we buy some surgical tubing. This is just rubber tubing, surgical tubing, and you can cut off in little sections, about 1/4-inch pieces. and I've already got some that's cut here. A little piece about 1/4 of an inch, and slide it over the eye of the trailer hook, like so. And then when we've got it over the end of the trailer hook, we'll take the eye of the hook and put it through the surgical tubing and the eye of the trailer hook at the same time. The end result is it's semi-rigid and will stay in a straight line where these two hooks are lined up. If you put one on and allow it to dangle around, it's more susceptible to hanging up. Now this makes a neat configuration. We've got double the chance of hooking short striking fish. Let's talk a little bit about sizes of spinnerbaits. That is the weight of the spinnerbait, which acts as a balance to keep it running upright. If we didn't have any weight down here, the spinnerbait might run in this kind of configuration, but that's why they run upright, is the weight, and it also allows you to attain more depth. The bigger the weight, the deeper the spinnerbait will run on a steady retrieve. That's a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait that I have here. Let me show you one that's the other extreme. This is about as large a spinnerbait as they make. This contraption here is probably an ounce, ounce and a quarter. Just an increased size of lead on the head here, and a big old blade here. This is probably about a number 8 or number 9 Indiana type blade. And then we have another little spinnerbait, and this is the other extreme. This little bait here is probably the lowest they go. This is about an 1/8 ounce, between an 1/8 and a quarter, or an 1/8 and a 3/16. And this little bait will catch brim, it'll catch crappie, it'll also catch bass in a lot of sizes. But this is about the other extreme of the size of the spinnerbait. About an 1/8 ounce up to an 1.5 ounces. Now then, let's talk a little bit about blades. We got basically 3 types of blades. The most popular is the Colorado type blade, which is an oval shaped spinnerbait blade. This one's in chartreuse. Then we got an Indiana type blade, which is a teardrop. It's more oval, a longer tip up here. It allows for faster action at a slower retrieve. And then we got the willow leaf blade, which is a long, elongated type blade, and this is used successfully around grass. This blade rotates like this instead of the big wobble that you normally get with a Colorado Indiana type blade. It allows it to hang up less in grass. These blades put off deeper vibration than these do, but each serves its own purpose. 3 basic type of blades: Indiana, Colorado, and willow leaf. All right, let's see if we can go fishing and catch another bass. This time I'm going to use another spinnerbait. I've already got tied on another rod and reel, and this is one of my favorites, which is a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait with a willow leaf blade on the back and a Colorado blade up the shaft. The Colorado blade spins on the shaft, and the willow leaf blade just rotates on a ball bearing swivel. Now, I mentioned ball bearing swivels earlier, and a ball bearing swivel, you can just about tell if you blow on them or just spin them, as we're doing here. The ball bearing swivel will spin very freely. You take an inferior product like just a rotating ball bearing that's not, or a rotating swivel that's not a ball bearing, it won't do that. Just keep spinning indefinitely in the wind. But a ball bearing swivel will give you a lot more action for the lure. Now then, this is a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, again with a white skirt and a white trailer. And this puts off an extremely large amount of vibration in the water, and also flash with these 2 blades going. Usually in different directions, but not always. So let's go fish and see if we can catch one on this type spinnerbait now. Nothing compares to a Bush Hog spinnerbait, tournament tested for more than 2 decades throughout the United States. The Bush Hog design has been copied by more manufacturers than any other, made by disabled American veterans. The Bush Hog with laser sharp hooks falls straight and runs true every time. They're perfectly balanced at any speed. Next time, insist on the spinnerbait that's been a top winner in tournament after tournament, the original snagless Bush Hog. Bush Hog, I never go out on the water without them.
This is prime cofilament fishing line. 2 fibers combine for half the stretch of monofilament line. So it's more sensitive, so fast, so powerful, it gives you the advantage to outfish all the rest. Prime cofilament, sensitive, fast, powerful, from DuPont.
This is the place where the work gets done. Work that's the measure of a man. This is the home of America's best. This is the home of America's best. This is Red Man Land. Red Man Land. Red Man Land.
Warning, this product may cause gum disease and tooth loss.
All right, when fishing a tandem blade spinnerbait, I use basically 2 methods. Running along about a foot underneath the surface, just where I can barely see the spinnerbait, but yet going at a fairly fast retrieve. And then that gives you the fish some time to see the lure when they're in a feeding mood. And the other method is throw the bait out and start a retrieve almost immediately upon hitting the water, and bringing the spinnerbait blade up right next to the surface of the water, making it bulge or breaking the surface. On that cast, I picked up some grass, throw it again next to the grass, pull it off, and make the blades nearly break the surface. You don't want them to come out of the water, but make the spinnerbait bulge. That'll activate fish that aren't in aggressive mood. They'll want to come up and hit out of an impulse bite instead of in a feeding frenzy. There's a fish ran out from under that grass immediately and got that bait. That's a nice little bass there. He just came out there and made a flash on that spinnerbait as I was fast retrieving it along. And that's what I would call an aggressive bite there. Oh! Hit the tandem blade spinnerbait with a willow leaf attached on it. It's about 1.25 pound bass, something like that. There we go. Now then, one important thing you might want to check after every fish catch. See what kind of shape the spinnerbait's in here. The skirt's all tangled up. Slide the skirt back, get your trailer all affixed right, and align the spinnerbait so that everything is in line. This one's still out of shape. Got to get all lined up to where the top of the arm is right over the hook. That looks like it's in pretty good shape now. And that's a small sacrifice to pay for catching a bass. Throw it out, right along to where you're just barely breaking the surface of the water, bulging the spinnerbait. It'll make those aggressive bass come out from under that floating grass and attack the spinnerbait. They really can't stand that flash. I think we're, again, getting impulse bites instead of aggressive feeding bites. 2 of the most important things in adjusting a spinnerbait is the way you bend the wire away from the center point, the pivot point. Might demonstrate this by the wider that we spread the wire at the pivot point, the more action we put on the blade, and it allows the work the lure slowly. I might demonstrate that. I've got it spread apart. Now let's see what we do on this cast here. Cast the lure out, and it allows the lure, boy, can I really feel the action there going now. And that works well on a slow retrieve. It allows the bait to work more slowly and give off more vibration. Now then, I might go the other extreme, and from the pivot point here, we bend the bait down, the wire, to where it's almost touching the hook, but does have free movement over the hook. There's a critical point there. Now this is when you're retrieving the lure fast. This will keep the bait from turning over and over in the water and run straight instead of running to one side or the other. And it's used when you really want to bulge the spinnerbait next to the surface. Now then, that's primarily what we're doing now, but I wanted to demonstrate the spreading the lure wide and allowing the spinnerbait to be worked slowly, giving off more vibration. Now, as you can see, this bait here, since I bent the wire down, you can really retrieve it at a fast rate of speed, bulging the surface, and not giving the spinnerbait a chance to run to one side or to list or revolve over and over in the water. We need to have a spinnerbait that will work true and straight and run upright. While I'm talking about equipment and methods, I might say that we're using a 5.5 foot bait casting rod today with a fast retrieve bait casting reel. Now then, I'm not turning the lure handle very fast, but the bait is coming in at about 26, 28 inches per revolution, and that's a high-speed reel. It allows you to cover a lot more territory with a spinnerbait and a lot less work. Several years ago, we had low-speed reels, and you really had to crank the lure or the reel in order to make the lure come in very fast. In fast bulging the spinnerbait, a fellow would be tired in a half day's fishing before he was done. Okay, we've moved in here to where the shoreline comes in closer, or the grass line comes in closer to the shore, in and around these reeds in the water. These are excellent hangouts for the largemouth bass, and with the spinnerbait that we're using now, bulging the spinnerbait, they'll run out from the reeds and hit the bait. Hopefully that's what will occur. There's a fish moved over there in those reeds now, if I can get back in there. Run the spinnerbait fast, by the reed. There, he came out. He rushed out that reed and got the bait. I saw him flash there. All right. Mr. Bass came out of those reeds. That's a good illustration. Oh, that one got away. Well, anyway, maybe there'll be another one next to the reeds. One of the key things to concentrate on in fishing a spinnerbait, regardless of whether you're fishing it fast like I am right now or slow, is to just imagine that there's a fish looking at your spinnerbait all the time. And whatever you do, you're trying to entice that fish to give it that extra edge to make him bite. So sometimes when you pull by a little cluster of grass, you might want to drop even a fast-moving spinnerbait just an instant to give him a chance to bite the lure. But whatever you do, concentrate on the fish being behind the lure and enticing him to bite. Just like that one right there did. Well, he went on down the bank. Let's make another cast over there and see if we can get that one again. See if we'll have a second chance on him. Anytime that we have a spinnerbait moving along, you're feeling a good vibration with a stiff action rod like we're fishing here, and you feel the vibration change in the spinnerbait, it's time to set the hook. That's a key indicator that a fish has got the bait and coming at you. Anytime you have a change in the pitch of the vibration, that's the time to set the hook. Fish the spinnerbait slow when you're fishing deep, and set the hook fast. When you're fishing the spinnerbait fast, you're going to react pretty doggone fast. It's a natural reaction. There we go. Got lucky on another cast there. Spinnerbait caught another fish. Well, that is a nice bass. Come on in here, Mr. Fish. Okay. All right. That one come out and hit that spinnerbait. All right, come back there, boy. Boy, look what a mess we got into this time. He really did a number on that spinnerbait, bending the wire. See if I can get it out without tying a knot in the line. And by the way, while we're talking about line size, with spinnerbait fishing, you can use just about any size line that you want to get away with. Line size is not that important in respect to light line, less visibility or whatever, because when you're fishing a fast-moving spinnerbait, it depends on the lure and the action and not trying to get away with putting a lure down there that's invisible. And line size, in my opinion, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Again, here we're going to have to bend the spinnerbait, get it back into shape again, and we'll get back out there, catch another fish. When you're fishing visible structure, you try to come just the way I bumped that reed there. Doggone it. As I was going to say, if there's a fish there and you bump the reed, that's going to activate the fish into striking. Let's see if lightning will strike twice in the same place. Get close to the object, run the spinnerbait through, bump it. Oh, I picked up grass that time. But anyway, that was a good illustration, that strike there that occurred when you can bump a structure, either the reed, the blade of grass, or a tree trunk, or something that's in the water. If you can make the spinnerbait hit it, it'll activate the fish into striking the lure. It always helps to hit the object that you're fishing around. Okay, go to the next one down here. There you come off of it, got it. That there was a good illustration. I just missed one fish at a reed and came right by the next reed, and the fish came out of there and struck the spinnerbait on a fast retrieve when it got about 6 inches. Oh, gee, that's a nice fish. Come on, boy. Come on in here. All right. Again, now this fish here came from that reed right there on the bank. The fish was in there holding in the hot sun. We're fishing here in the, early summer, late spring. When the fish are aggressive, they're hitting fast-moving spinnerbaits, coming out from that little bit of shade that they get from around that reed there, and hitting that spinnerbait out of aggression. Fast-moving spinnerbait. Son, what are we talking about? Let's talk a little bit about the basic design of the spinnerbait, and one important thing, the length of the arm. Let me pull another one out of the box here. This one here is about 2.5 inches from where you tie the line on to where the blade is affixed. This one here is about 1.5 inches, something like that. And the shorter arm spinnerbait, that means it's less snagless, but it also will create a lot more vibration in the water, being shorter, where the blade comes to the back, about the back of the hook. And it really will send out a lot of vibration, and it's used as a drop bait. In other words, pulling the lure and allowing it to fall, as we've been doing along the grass line. This one will be much more weedless in the water because the arm pulls the blade back behind the hook and allows it to come through and around a lot more stuff. This bait here is better for as using a drop bait, pumping along the bottom. This one for retrieving it through grass and in brush and stuff like that. That's the two basic differences in the spinnerbaits. Now then, you can have long arms and short arm spinnerbaits with both tandem and single spins on them. And usually a single spin spinnerbait with a medium length arm, this is not extremely long, some may come all the way back this far. They're used in fishing deep water. The tandem spin, the double spin spinnerbait is used in fast retrieve on or near the surface when fish are really aggressive. That's the two basic design differences in the spinnerbaits. I'm going to use, again, my most versatile spinnerbait here, the single spin, and demonstrate a type of fishing that's noted for being summertime fishing and in wintertime fishing. That is a long bar that's coming out from the bank here. It falls off into deep water where I'm sitting here. Slopes off on either side, and there's a ridge that comes out here. I'm going to use a spinnerbait as a deep bait, and I'm going to yo-yo it. In other words, I'm going to pull the bait along, let the bait helicopter down to the bottom, pull it up, let it helicopter down again. So, we're going to throw it out, and it's very similar to worm fishing. I'm throwing by those grass clusters out there that's on top of the ridge that runs out this way. We'll let the spinnerbait fall down to the bottom, then we'll pull the bait up. Now, boy, I can really feel the vibrations when I pull the lure up. Then I'm going to tight line it back down. Keep a little bit of tension on the lure as I allow it to fall back to the bottom. Pull it up again, feel the vibrations, and then let it fall back down again. That's called yo-yoing. And we're fishing here in about 10 or 12 foot of water. And when fish are deep, they won't come up and hit a bait that's run across the surface. But if you get it down there where they're living at, where they're hiding out, then we can catch a vast majority of them. Just a fast method of fishing a spinnerbait on the bottom that's very similar to standard worm fishing methods. And it gets vertical on the boat, wind it in, give it another cast out, let the bait sink till all the slack goes out of the line. Pull the bait up, let it fall, flutter back down to the bottom. As it's falling down, that spinnerbait with the short arm is really spinning as it falls down to the bottom. That's when most of the strikes will occur, is on the fall. Pull it up, let it fall. One ticked at 10. There it goes. All right. That's the first deep yo-yoed spinnerbait fish. Oh, he sounded. He must be in 15, 20 foot of water down there. This is really a good method for summertime fishing, and again in wintertime fishing, is a slow fall spinnerbait down in the 15, 20 foot depths. All right. So single spin spinnerbait, yo-yoed off a 15-foot point that runs out in the lake. And that fish there, he hit it just like you would a plastic worm, except he did hit a single spin spinnerbait. Now then, in the wintertime, to get a slow fall, I use a piece of pork back here, a number 1 or number 11 pork frog, in order to get it a slower fall. Gives the fish a better chance to look at the bait and to have more time to react to it on the fall. The fluttering effect is what activates the strike. Boy, that didn't take long once we got out on that bar to catch one. Using that yo-yoing technique. I'm gonna drop it down, work it along. Now here, I was talking a while ago about concentrating on imagining that there's a fish looking at your bait all the time. Here, even the most vicious strikes at 15 or 20 foot deep will be transmitted through the line and the rod as being a subtle strike. We dropped off here in a little bit deeper water. Let me wind in, and I think it's about time to illustrate another versatile feature of a spinnerbait, and that's changing a blade. Most of these have a snap on the swivel that you can just take the blade off, and I'm going to substitute for this larger blade a smaller one. And this is going to allow me to get a little bit deeper off the side of that bar. We're now in about 15 to 20 foot of water, whereas a while ago was in 10 to 12 foot of water. Make the cast out. That smaller blade, it doesn't have as much resistance in the water, and it'll go deeper quicker and allow me to have the same control over the lure that I was having in the 10, 12 foot range with the number 5 blade that I had on. Now I got a number 3 on. I just touched bottom, pulling it up. Blade's barely ticking along the bottom, pulling it about 1.5 feet, 2 foot off the bottom. And it didn't take long. Okay. That fish was almost vertical when he hit. He's doing a big figure 8 down on the bottom of the lake. Here he comes up. All right, Mr. Bass. You'll be free in just a little bit. Oh, another nice bass from off of the side of the bar. On the blade I just put on there, I put on this little number 3 shiny nickel blade. Allowed me to fish the spinnerbait deeper and slower off the side of the bar. That's a pretty good illustration of being a little bit flexible and the versatility of a spinnerbait. This little snap that allows a quick change of a blade when it's needed, that's a nice feature in a spinnerbait regardless of what brand spinnerbait you might buy. And my plastic trailer is still in pretty good shape. Let's try it out through there again one more time. All right, I'm gonna make a cast out. That's an obvious piece of structure right there on this bar. And doggone if it didn't pay off right away. There, nice fish. Come off on the fall. Okay. Well, they've colored up nice in this clear water. That one I didn't have time to get hit down to the bottom and pump it on the yo-yo. He hit it on the dead fall. All right, Mr. Bass. Hooked in the corner of the mouth. There we go. Pretty little fish. Now then, I don't know if I talked about the sharpness of a hook being important, but we're fishing a spinnerbait on the dead fall and not on a tight line. the fast retrieve, it's essential that you have a sharp hook. This hook here will hang on a fingernail. That's how sharp it is. If you don't ever trust a spinnerbait that comes out of a package. Always get a good broadhead file or a mill file and put a good sharp point on it. It should be needle sharp, because the subtle strikes and the bites that we get, when there's no tension on the line, we need a sharp hook in order to set the hook on the fish. Every so often, you need to retie. The line will get frayed, it'll get fatigued up here. I encourage you to use a premium line, but it'll still get wear on it, even the best line. I do encourage you also to never use a swivel or a snap on a spinnerbait, because if you use a snap or a swivel, it'll get turned around and get caught underneath, and you'll have all kind of problems with line breakage, actually line cutting on the wire itself and the swivel and everything. A spinnerbait's intended to be tied on with a knot. Now then, I strongly suggest either an improved clinch knot, which I'm going to tie here, or a Palomar knot. Those are my two recommendations. With those, you can get 95 to 100% line strength. Now then, with an improved clinch knot, am I tying here, as I'm tying here, 6 turns around, and then slide it down slowly. Oftentimes, I want to just jerk it down and not get a good knot, but pull it down slowly and clip off the end and check it after you get your knot tied on. Make sure you got a good snug tight knot. And then you're back in business fishing. When you retie, that ensures that you got a good knot and you don't get lazy. If you use swivels and snaps in putting a lure on, you'll go and get careless and the line will get fatigued, and then the first time you hang a good fish, you'll break him off. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to release the fish and not have them swim around with lures in their mouth. The spinnerbait, I hope we've demonstrated that it's one of the most versatile lures in one's tackle box. It's probably the most versatile lure as far as the weights and the ways we can fish it. You can fish it from bulging on the surface to drop bait for winter fishing and for summertime fishing. It's a great lure for fishing all around, just like we are right there. Got a good bite. All right. Okay, let me get rid of this. Here we go. Well, I think this illustrates the point. Spinnerbaits are a versatile lure, can be fished in a variety of ways, lots of times a year, and spinnerbaits and bass, they just naturally go together.